Greetings and welcome back, fellow audio enthusiasts. It is I, Jason, your host of Two Channel Listening. Yes, this video is part 2 of a 3-part series. Hopefully I can bring it to a 4- and 5-part series. But what you have here is the $1,500 bookshelf challenge among the Monitor Audio Silver 107G, the Aperion Audio Verus 3 Concert, V8B, and our German challenger over there, the Heco Celan Revolution 3. This video is about the Monitor Audio, and let's talk about Mr. 7G. 7G as in Generation 7. I put together a little chart of the prior 5 generations of the Monitor Audio Silver bookshelf speakers. There's an interesting trend. Now, you will see the interesting trend. The speakers are not really getting heavier as they get larger. Kind of interesting. While the drivers grew to the 8-inch variety that is now in the 7th generation, it's not getting too much deeper. Another interesting counter trend to speakers getting larger is instead of getting more efficient, it's losing efficiency. This 7th generation is rated at an 87.5 dB 1 watt. Once upon a time, these were 90 dB efficient. Granted, that was with the old C-Cam 6-inch driver. There was a 7-inch driver before that, and then they started going to the last 3 generations, this 8-inch C-Cam driver, which is basically Monitor Audio's in-house aluminum driver with an aluminum 1-inch tweeter. Let's talk about the cabinet. Let's talk about the fit and finish versus our competitors over here, shall we? So you have a modest-sized bookshelf speaker that is the most boxy, the most rectangle of these competitors over here in a somewhat decent matte white finish. Now, typically, I like matte white finishes. I like that you can do this all day long and you're not gonna see a fingerprint on the speaker. I don't ever see dust on these, so for that, I appreciate the matte white finish. I can sneeze on the other side of the room here and it shows up on that salon over there. It's quite annoying. Nevertheless, as a $1,495 speaker here in the US, personally speaking, it is the blah speaker of these 3. It's just a box. It's a $1,500 box. However, I will give it this. When it comes to the design, here's what I like about the front baffle. The front baffle is incredibly clean. When you're looking at it, and what you can't quite see is the fact that because of this trim ring and because that they invert the rubber surrounds, you actually have an incredibly smooth roll-off profile with the Monitor Audio Silver 7100. There is nothing to get in the way of the actual frequencies of the sound waves emanating from this driver. It is a complete clean design with a smooth surface that just it radiates out in a nice consistent pattern. And equally in this B&W-esque tweeter protective lens here, it's a sucked in lens, and it actually has a somewhat of a waveguide design to it. So you have a very nice clean profile. Nothing interferes with the woofer driver itself other than the tweeter lens. It's a very fine front baffle. You have a very simple and very light grill here that slaps right on. It's nice hidden magnets, quite easy to work with, pops off fairly simply, and there's no weight to it. It is a plastic design, and voila, quite simple. That's how I listen to these speakers for pretty much 90% of my time with them. Around back, it is a rear ported design. All three speakers are rear ported design. It is a plastic port. You have the 5-way binding posts. It is a bi-wireable speaker. Again, all three of these bookshelf speakers are bi-wireable by design. I hate you. It has the brass stamping. I'm pretty sure this is a brass stamping. It is not ferrous. I did put my 30-pound magnet to it. It did not hold whatsoever. Nevertheless, I don't like these. Again, Aperion actually had true cable design. I'm going to leave that alone. Around back, the other interesting thing, this is specific to monitor audio designs in general. With monitor audio, you do not have front fasteners. There's no screws, there's no hex heads. Nothing is holding the front of the drivers in except through the through bolt design. And I've taken pictures as I took most of the speaker apart for you. You have two bolts that go through the back of the speaker through these rear holes, and it couples the driver to the box itself. And as you tighten it, you're adding an additional stiffening point to this box. It's an interesting design. I don't quite agree with it for specific reasons that's happened to me, and I've actually heard it happening to other owners. Out of the box, onto the stands, both bolts were loose on both speakers. Now, I actually forgot to check one of the bolts, one of the tweeter bolts, and there was just a slight bit of noise. You can actually hear a little bit of that vibration from the rear bolt. So tighten those suckers back down, they're fine. I move these speakers in and out a lot as I'm doing the different listening tests, different amps, different tracks, into the bedroom, back in here, and they kind of work themselves a little bit loose again. I'm not a fan of anything that can turn loose, especially that's supposed to hold your drivers in. So while I understand the premise that if you're a normal owner, you take it out of the box, you put it on your stand, you tighten them down, you should be good for a very long time. I get that. How I use them, Moving on. Where I give kudos to the Monitor Audio's design, aside from the nice smooth baffle and that's clean profile, is actually on the inside. Now, I once upon a time, early in my audiophile career, right, started out with a 4th generation Silver RX Monitor Audio, one of the first my high-end speakers that I bought getting into this hobby. And when I took it apart, yes, I was doing that from the very beginning, this is what I found in the 4th generation, not this specific, but this was the material, this was the thickness from my RX Silver Monitor Audio speaker. Monitor Audio has improved on its dampening characteristics. Monitor Audio has improved on its box designs. This is actually from the Heco over there, but it was hilarious when I saw this. I go, oh, I remember that. So I was expecting this when I opened up the Monitor Audio. When I opened up the Monitor Audio, I was pleasantly surprised. Even though this is the lightest of the 3 speakers here, it had the second best cabinet design, inner cabinet design, in that it has these furring strips, or what, basically you could say is a lattice in the back third of the speaker that runs the entire length of the interior of the cabinet to stiffen it up, so that there is mostly a consistency with how the sidewalls operate. And so you've got, instead of a shelf that runs from the front to the back between the tweeter and the woofer, you actually have that interior design to add some stiffness to the back of the speaker. And there's a second part. There is this another little shelf that is in between the front tweeter and the front woofer here, about right there, to give a little bit more stiffness to the front baffle and a little bit to the upper design of the cabinet. So kudos to Monitor Audio for that additional stiffness, surprising given that it is the lightest speaker here, and that is attributed to the actual drivers themselves, and that it does have the thinnest wall cabinet of these three. Now, speaking of the crossover, it's better than what I had in my 4th generation. It's nothing to write home about. It does have some nice polycaps in it. You see your ubiquitous sandcast resistors in there, and you're going to see that it has those very small air coils, including a couple of iron coils. Pretty typical for this price point. It's a nice clean crossover. The fact that it does have polycaps, I should reiterate that I've had other more expensive speakers that haven't had polycaps in them. They've had electrolytic caps. So, okay, cool. That's a positive, that's a benefit. Regarding the crossover, I have to make special mention that the woofer, this 8-inch woofer, crosses over to the tweeter at 2.3K. 2.8K, 2.8K. I'm going to say that plays a role in the listening test with these three speakers. Now the design, those woofers, I said that the woofer in the tweeter is the lightest of these three. Interestingly, you pull that woofer out, it is a nice sleek design, it's a shallow design, and it is kind of like a resin plastic cast, it is a resin cast basket. It's supposed to cut down on ringing from your typical steel stamped baskets or other metal type baskets of other types of woofers. When you have that big of a basket and that much metal, there can be some ringing through it, and it can add additional vibrations. So by having that kind of that plastic, that is supposed to cut down on the vibrations that make its way to the baffle and throughout the cabinet itself. So that cuts down on those resonances. Resonances damage your signal, and it can create smearing. The tweeter shocked me. When I picked that tweeter up and I held it in my hand, there was almost nothing to it. It is one of the lightest tweeters that I have come across in most speakers that I've ever taken apart. Again, it is a plastic basket. There's no metal to it with the exception of where the bolt threads through to the tweeter and the actual aluminum lens itself. It is, I'm not even kidding you, it was only a few ounces in weight. And I have to wonder, it's a supposition on my part that plays into some of the sound characteristics, because in my experience with a lot of really robust and heavy magnet tweeters that have a lot of power handling to them, they tend to sound smoother. Anyways, interesting designs. It is the 7th generation. Again, the C-cam tweeter, the C-cam woofer. Those are all in-house with what Monitor Audio has designed for their speakers. They do this. I had already mentioned in part 1 that it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the Aperion audio over here, this V8B, the 8-inch woofer, that massive, heavy-duty 8-inch woofer in this speaker, is the best bass I've ever heard from a bookshelf speaker that I have owned or tested. It is deep, it is powerful, it is punchy, it is articulate, and it absolutely is by far the best sounding bass from a bookshelf speaker of its class, of its price range, up to $3,000. And I will say that the bass was deeper, hit harder, and punchier than my near $5,000 Harbeth Compact 7s. Just super impressive. So off the bat, against the Monitor Audio, the Monitor Audio comes in at 3rd place. How does it come in at 3rd place compared to the Celan? Well, here's where I found trouble with the Monitor Audio, and I'm just going to dive into the whole characteristics of this Monitor Audio. particularly obviously the Silver 100 here. I remember my 4th generation being a little more polite, being a little bit more laid back, and definitely not as high-strung. My 4th generation was more consistent. There was some inconsistencies to this speaker in my room that kind of drove me batty. And with the bass, while the bass was fast, this driver is definitely, it's a light 8-inch woofer, and it's capable of being very punchy, having very good rhythm, quick, good slam, but there was times where there was an overhang. There was times where it sounded boomy and a little bit of bloom compared to the Aperion audio, where the Aperion audio was just, it was always in check and it was always clean. It wasn't always clean with the 7G here. There were times where this bass would just, I could hear boom in the room. Sorry. And it just, it would cause me to have to lower the volume to get it to where it stayed even Steven. And speaking of Steven, the one song that I played several times just to really understand the characteristics of the 3 speakers, it was Tin Pan Alley on Tidal, Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was the 16-bit version, so the CD quality version of Tin Pan Alley. Just one of my favorite tracks next to Lenny, and 3 times through each speaker, and every single time there was a bite to Stevie Ray's guitar that was not present with these other 2 speakers. While I could appreciate how large the guitar sounded, while I could appreciate how high and how it kind of floated up, what the monitor audio did, and it has to be attributed to the fact that the tweeter is trying to do too much at 2.3K, it added bite and it added a forwardness to certain guitar notes with Stevie Ray Vaughan playing that just was not present with these other 2 at their 2.8K cutoffs. And so many a times I just found that there was a stridency and there was a sharpness to Stevie's guitar that just, it's unnatural, and it doesn't sound right when it does that, because you get into a groove and then as he's grooving along and then it hits into one of those lower notes and it snaps and comes out at you, and actually really comes forward into the room, and it's just not very natural sounding to me. So again, it's just one of those things where time and time again, I would start with the monitor audio and I would say, okay, that's pretty good. The bass, man, it's deep. It's down 6 dB at 35 Hertz, but it's definitely more bass. It's definitely punchier than my Harbeth's Compact 7s. So I'm thinking, okay, this is really good. The tweeter, it's pretty good. Lots of detail in there, lots of air, mostly wall to wall, very good definition for a $1,500 bookshelf speaker. Again, I have to say that. But then I would put the Aperion in and I'd go, oh, it's deeper, it's cleaner, it's tighter, it's more consistent. Ooh. I'm going to save what I have to say about the Celan in the 3rd video, because again, it has an asterisk. It's a modified speaker that I had to modify. I'm going to leave that for the 3rd video. But nevertheless, after I made those modifications, clearly the monitor audio continued to consistently come in 3rd place for me with all of the different tracks that I was playing. Didn't matter if it was Melody Gardot. It didn't matter if it was Tool. Well, it did matter if it was Tool, because again, that stridency would just come out and slap me about the face, and it just, I have to sit here and I always try to find something really good to say about a speaker. There's so much good design here, there's a lot of engineering, but I have to wonder if they've cut to the bone too much. They've cut out too much, they're trying to be too much, especially by having that tweeter take on so much responsibility. I don't quite understand that. It's a weird compromise that they've made with the Silver 107G. I kind of also have to wonder, if I had a fourth speaker, would it come in fourth place? I am trying to get some other $1,500-ish speakers to add to the context of this series for you, because I'm now curious. At the end of the day, folks, you know, I paid for this speaker. I paid for the Heco. This is on loan to me. And I always try to find a scenario or a situation that, how could I say you might be interested in this for this particular reason? Well, to add some more, you know, lemon and salt to the wound, I now have my FEZZ Titania KT88 tube integrated amplifier. I've been running it in this week, and I thought, you know what? This is a beautiful $4,000 integrated amplifier. I started out with the Totem Signature ones and to get a baseline and go, okay, I know where the Totem's supposed to come in for a sound profile. I know what people say about the Totem Signature. Then I put the monitor audio in, and I took the monitor audio out fast. I was shocked how adding a tube integrated amplifier, it was almost unlistenable how strident, how bright it was. Talk about bad synergy with my integrated amplifier here. I put in, again, I immediately put the totems back in and I go, smaller woofer, doesn't have nearly the low end grunt, and yet it is so smoother and didn't have that stridency. So I just, under no circumstances, personally, can I recommend a 7G to anybody. I just, if it's $1,500, buy an Aperion or something else that I may say in the future. If you have a couple hundred more dollars or a few hundred more dollars, buy the Philharmonic, the BMR. I don't get it. I've never been so, you know, against a speaker before, but this did not work for me. It did not work for me in my bedroom, and it absolutely does not work for me in here with my Peachtree, with my Titania, and a little bit with the Aperion Audio E2 Energy traditional Class AB amplifier that's on the level of Emotiva style. And yes, you know, not as detailed, so does it take some of that stridency out. But man, you know, once you know it's there and compared to the other speakers at the same or similar prices, this is one of the harshest videos I have to end on. I could not find, other than on paper, there's a lot of goodness there, but man, I think Monitor Audio is just, they're missing the boat on this one. Sorry guys, you know. Anybody want a cheap pair of silver 100s? They ain't staying with me, I tell you that. So write me a note and I will sell you a pair of silver 100s, because it's not for me. I hate to end it on that. I will have lots to talk about when it comes to the Celan over there, what I had to do to modify the Celan, but after spending $75 on the Celan, I absolutely preferred it over the Monitor Audio, hands down, for a variety of different reasons. Folks, that's how I do reviews. I have to like it, I have to want it, I bought it, do I keep it? I don't keep it. That's just the way it is. That's what two-channel listening is for me. This is my journey. At least 3 amplifiers, at least a couple of different rooms, different scenarios, and generally always up against 2 other speakers to understand a profile, what I'm hearing. Is it better? Is it marginally better, or is it even competitive? The tweeter kills it for me. The tweeter really killed it. I could understand that at certain frequencies, there's a little bit of bass boom. I could live with some of that, turn it down a couple of notches, but not with the treble. There was no hiding from the way that this speaker treats high frequencies. So join me next time as I walk you through what I did with the Heco Celan and how $75 can make a world of difference to a $1,500 bookshelf speaker. Thank you all for joining me. Be good to one another, and I will see you next time.